Webinar. You have entered as an organizer and may now speak to any other organizers or panelists on the line. When you are ready to begin the presentation, press the Start Broadcast button on the GoToWebinar control panel to allow all attendees to hear you. This system will notify you once you begin your broadcast. The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Thank you again for making time to listen in to the Vice President webcast this afternoon. My name is Catherine Rogers. I am one of two chapter and regional operations specialists here at Sigma headquarters. If I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you before, it's nice to see you on the call today, and thank you again so much for serving your chapter and for listening in today. Just so that you're aware, there are quite a few of you on the line, so I'm going to keep all attendees muted just to reduce background noise, make it as easy as possible for everyone to hear. I'm also recording today's call for posting in the All Chapter Officers Workgroup later, so you will remain muted. However, that doesn't mean that I don't want you to still interact with me today, and there's a couple of ways that you can do that. The first and probably easiest way is to use the questions log there. Just type your question or your comment in, send that through. That will come privately to me. I may answer it at the time it comes through. Otherwise, I might wait and save it till later on or at the end of the presentation, but please know that I will get to your question at some point. The other option is to use the raise hand button. That requests that your line is unmuted so that you can ask your question or share your comment aloud. Please note that you must have a microphone at your computer to be able to be unmuted and ask your question aloud. So please feel free to use either or both of those features throughout our call today. If you have something that you need clarification on, or you have a comment or an experience that you want to share, I do welcome your input. Just so that you are all aware, everything that I reference in our presentation today does come from the 2017-2019 International and Chapter Bylaws. So anytime your chapter is having a board meeting, doing anything with reference to the bylaws, please make sure that you are using the most up-to-date version, which is the 2017-2019 version. You can download a copy of those bylaws from the All Chapter Officers Workgroup in the circle, and don't forget that your chapter must submit their 2017-2019 chapter bylaws no later than August 1st of this year. The first thing I want to cover this afternoon is just kind of a basic overview of the Board of Directors structure, and we'll go briefly into detail on the role of each Board of Director volunteer. I find that chapters are most productive when all volunteer leaders are aware of everyone else's role so that they can help support each other as well as hold each other accountable. So when I say board of directors, this is who I'm referring to. I'm referring to your president, president-elect, vice president, treasurer, counselor, and your secretary. Besides president-elect, all board positions here are required. All of these positions must be elected by ballot. And these are what we refer to as your officers, also known as your voting board leaders. So should there ever be an occasion that your board needs to vote on an item, these are the only people that are able to cast a vote. Just some basic general officer responsibilities for every volunteer leader. You should obviously participate in business meetings, activities, communications as much as possible. You should submit a report for your position at each board meeting related to your position-specific functions. So, for example, the treasurer should give a quick rundown at every board meeting of where the finances stand for the chapter, what has been spent, what has brought in, so that everybody's aware at all times of where the chapter is at and what's going on. And you should prepare your office for transition at the end of each term. After elections, you should onboard your incoming officers to make that transition as easy as possible and help the chapter board function as seamlessly as possible. So like I said, let's touch quickly on each of the responsibilities for all of the board of directors. The president serves as the chief representative of the chapter. They work to administer the business of the chapter, including coordinating board of directors meetings. They may serve as an ex officio member of any committees that the board has put together, except for the Leadership Succession Committee. The president cannot be involved with the Leadership Succession Committee in any capacity. And then the president will ensure the submission of reports, including the chapter annual report and the chapter bylaws, which are submitted to us at headquarters, the verification of fees form, which is also submitted to us, and the president will also ensure the submission of the IRS Form 990 to the IRS, which is a requirement for all of our U.S. chapters. Please note that it does say that the president ensures that those reports are submitted, not that they're actually doing the submission themselves. So there is a good amount of delegation that is the responsibility of the president, and overseeing that everything is done on time and that bylaws are followed. The president-elect, again, is an optional position, but should your chapter choose to elect a president-elect, essentially the president-elect is a mentee to the president. So they will shadow the president for 1 to 2 years of the current president's term, and then they will succeed into the role as president at the end of the current president's term. So, for example, say your chapter's president is serving from 2017 through 2019, and your chapter decides to elect a president-elect. I would recommend that you have that president-elect serve from 2017 to 2019. So their 1-year term will end at the same time as the current president's term, so that when the presidential term is over, then that succession of the president-elect into the presidency is automatic. Any specific responsibilities that are tasked to the president-elect are determined by the chapter's needs. Essentially, anything that you task your president-elect with should be with the end goal of furthering their knowledge of the chapter, getting to know chapter operations, how the board operates, bylaws, expectations, as well as getting to know the membership and the demographics of your membership, so that when your president-elect takes over as president, they feel comfortable, they have a good working knowledge of the entire chapter, and are ready to be the president. So some examples of what chapters have tasked their president-elects with include collection of award or report answers. So maybe a chapter is working towards the chapter key award, and they have that president-elect work on capturing some of that data and compiling an application for an award. Serving on a welcoming team at chapter events, again, that goes back to getting to know your membership, greeting people, putting yourself out there as the face of the chapter. And they might have that person work on recruiting committee members. The vice president, this is just a quick overview. We obviously are on the vice president webcast today, so we will get into your role more in depth here in just a few minutes, but just a quick overview. Should your chapter president vacate her role in any capacity, meaning she's just unable to be there for one board meeting, or if she completely vacates the role and steps down, then you as vice president will take over those presidential duties. Just like with our federal government, that's how it works here. There is some confusion if a chapter has a president-elect as well as a vice president. People think, oh, the president-elect takes over, and that's incorrect. According to bylaws, anytime the president vacates the role, again, even if it's just for, say, one board function or one meeting, then the vice president fills that role. The vice president is primarily tasked with the facilitation of chapter goals, including planning and implementation of the required 2 minimum chapter programs annually. And vice president can serve as a committee chair as needed. If your chapter is an at-large chapter, it might be a good idea to elect a vice president to represent each school to ensure that each location or each school or clinical setting is being represented, and that demographically everyone in your membership is receiving benefits and programming. The treasurer is pretty straightforward. They manage the chapter funds, they prepare the financial section of the chapter annual report, as well as preparing the annual budget, and they will work to develop fiscal policies and procedures. Like I said, it's really crucial that the treasurer presents the current financials to the entire board at each board meeting. And then there are some additional reports that the treasurer is expected to submit, including the verification of fees form if any dues changes are necessary. And again, they should submit that IRS Form 990 if they are a U.S. chapter. The counselor is the board member who leads the process for inducting new members, including developing communication strategies to promote the chapter and educate eligible students and potential nurse leader candidates about membership, eligibility criteria, and what they get for their membership. The counselor also sets up the inductions in the online induction system. It is a bylaws requirement that each chapter has at least one induction per fiscal year. They are the ones who are responsible for securing the candidate eligibility data, particularly for those student candidates. And using the online induction system, they will send membership invitations and correspondence. The counselor is the only volunteer chapter leader who must be a faculty at the affiliated School of Nursing. The reason behind that goes back to that securing the candidate eligibility data. Legally, it must be a faculty member who has access to those student records. So that is why the counselor must be faculty at your chapter's affiliated university. Counselors also serve on the governance committee. And at-large chapters must elect a counselor for each school. So again, back to the privacy issue and student records and student data. Legally, you must have a counselor for each affiliated school of nursing if your chapter is at large. The secretary works to record and distribute meeting minutes for each board meeting. They will keep official records of chapter activities. They should prepare and distribute the correspondence to all members, including any correspondence and communications to inactive members. And they can serve on committees as needed. There are some additional required leaders, non-officers, so again, non-voting. There are 2 standing required committees that each chapter must have according to bylaws, the first being the governance committee. The governance committee is comprised of at least 4 members who can be elected or appointed. 1 member is the elected counselor. If a chapter is at large, all their counselors can serve on the governance committee. And the governance committee is tasked primarily with managing the bylaws, including taking care of the submission to Sigma headquarters. The other standing required committee is the Leadership Succession Committee. Again, it is required. This is comprised of 3 members who must be elected. So the governance committee can be elected or appointed. Leadership Succession Committee must be elected. They manage the process for mentoring potential candidates and potential leaders, as well as setting up the entire balloting process and running that whole election process. The Leadership Succession Committee will also update the officer and committee chair report in the chapter management system after each election so that we at headquarters know who's serving in what position on behalf of the chapter. And again, the president cannot serve on the Leadership Succession Committee in any capacity. And then you're also required to have delegates. Delegates are not required year-round. Obviously, we don't have biennial convention constantly, so you are only required to fill these delegate positions at certain times of the biennium. Appointed positions, the delegates are appointed positions. They can be filled by any active member of the chapter. It does not have to be a sitting board member. Electronic delegates will handle any articles of incorporation votes, and then convention delegates vote on bylaws and resolutions and elect international leaders. And convention delegates are in person, and they meet once a biennium at the Conventional House of Delegates. Many chapters do choose to have optional leaders and form additional committees, just to kind of help take some of the larger bulk of the work off of those voting board members. So feel free to appoint or elect any optional volunteer leaders if your chapter has those needs. Some of our chapters will put together a membership involvement committee, including a membership chair, a membership ambassador. Maybe a communications and publicity committee would be helpful for your chapter, people to work on the newsletter or update the website and help your secretary with communications. Whatever it is that your chapter need, you can form and elect or appoint those committees and additional positions. So just a quick note again on vacancies. Again, anytime the president is unable to fulfill his or her position, the vice president takes over. Any other vacancies are filled by appointment until the next election. So if, for example, your secretary has to step down for any reason, then the president, with approval of the board, has the power to appoint a secretary until the next regularly scheduled election. Any questions at this time before I get more in depth into the vice president role and what is expected of you? Okay, not seeing any questions, so we will keep moving forward. So your first responsibility as vice president is, again, to perform the president's duties in the president's absence. So here's some tips on how to do that and do it successfully should this take place in your chapter. So if your chapter is at large or you have multiple sitting vice presidents, make sure that you have a policy and procedure written down and in place which documents which vice president will assume the role as president, so that in the event that the presidency is vacant, your chapter is not scrambling to decide who's taking over. But then the biggest task for you is to just become as familiar as possible with presidential tasks so that if you should have to take over that presidency, you don't feel completely overwhelmed and you have a good sense of what your temporary job is. So be proactive as possible. Collaborate with the president regularly through, maybe regular one-on-one meetings. Maybe ask to be CC'd or blind carbon copied on pertinent chapter board correspondence. Make sure that you know how to access chapter records. If you have any bank account stuff, if the president is a signatory, that might come up. If there's a chapter email address or a chapter Google Drive where you store stuff, make sure that you have all of those passwords in advance should you need them. Go ahead and be proactive and access online officer resources that we provide for the president, including the president's webcast and additional documents and tools that you can use. And then again, as always, just stay as involved as possible with chapter initiatives and activities. The more that you know what's going on with the chapter and with the membership, the better prepared you will be should you have to take over that presidency. So again, the main presidential responsibilities are ensure the submissions of reports, serve as the chief representative of the chapter, coordinating the annual business meeting and board of directors meetings, and ensure that all bylaws requirements are met. So making sure that you have at least one annual induction, you have at least one annual election, that you participate in the House of Delegates, that you conduct 2 or more programs, things like that. The reports that are due each year include the chapter annual report. It's due the first Wednesday in August every year. So this year's deadline is Wednesday, August 1st. The president also makes sure that the chapter bylaws are due and submitted in August of even years. So again, the bylaws are due this year, again on August 1st. And if your chapter is making any changes to what your members pay as far as dues and renewals, they will make sure that that verification of fees form is completed. But the bulk of your work as vice president is the planning and implementation of the required 2 events or programs per year. And again, when we say per year, we mean per fiscal year. So our fiscal year runs from July 1 to June 30th, and each chapter must have at least 2 programs or events during that time frame. The bylaws are open to interpretation as far as what content and what types of programming you offer. What you plan for your chapter membership should serve their needs, should make them better nurses, and should further their education and their career. Whatever that looks like for your chapter is completely up to you as a board. So again, the bylaws state that you are the one planning and conducting those 2 events or programs, all of which should support the mission of the society. Our mission is advancing world health and celebrating nursing excellence in scholarship, leadership, and service. So any of the programming that you put on should fall back on this mission and should meet the mission. So always keep that in mind. Anytime you're planning any type of event or chapter program, think, does it advance world health? Does it celebrate nursing excellence? Does it celebrate scholarship, leadership, and service? So always keep that in the back of your mind. Let's get into some tips as far as what is going to make your job as vice president easier, because the planning and implementation of those programs is a lot of work. So let's make it as easy on you as possible. Obviously, convenience is key, both for you and for your members. So is every event, program, chapter, activity, is it at the same location, same time, same date? Is it the 3rd Thursday of the month? Is it, the first Wednesday in March every year? Is that a tradition that your chapter holds? If so, is that helping your attendance and your engagement, or is that harming it? Do you need to reevaluate when and where you're holding activities? Do you know of other community locations that would work for members? Always remember that your membership is not just comprised of students. So holding all of your events on campus might not be ideal if a small portion of your membership are students. So think outside of your campus location and think outside of the university and think about what other locations would work. Are there any virtual platforms that you could use to supplement in-person gatherings? So could you use something like GoToWebinar, like we're using this afternoon, to either offer a live program, or could you use it to record it and then post it on your chapter website so that people can engage at any time? Think about what's going to make it easiest for your members to engage with you all. What do members want? So I mentioned earlier that everything that you offer should benefit your members, your membership organization. They're paying you money for membership benefits. How you plan those benefits is based on what your members want and what they expect to get for their member dollar. It sounds a little crass to think about money, but that's kind of what it boils down to. They're paying you for benefits, so give them benefits that they want. And the only way that you're going to know what they want is if you ask them what they want. We recommend that chapters do regular membership surveys. Regular to you could be once a biennium, could be annually. Decide as a board what is the best frequency for you as a chapter to do surveying of your members. There are many, many survey programs that are free or free up to a certain number of questions, something like that. And most come with tutorials and will have support through their website or through their program to make your life easier. You can always obtain a current mailing list through the chapter management system and look through that, double check, does everyone have an email address? Are there bad mailing addresses, so that when you're reaching out to those active members, you're making sure that you're giving everyone an opportunity to provide feedback. And some really nice questions, examples that I have seen chapters use that I really like. The first one being, have you attended a chapter event in the last year? Yes. If so, how did it go? Was it great? Was it uninteresting? Was it really well organized? What's your feedback? If you didn't attend a chapter event, why not? What was inconvenient about it? Was it in the middle of the day on campus? What do you work and you can't get there? Was the topic uninteresting to you? Was it a research day and you don't necessarily care about research because you're a brand new nurse and you're not at that point in your career? Ask for those pieces of feedback. Some of it might be a little hard to hear, it might be hard to swallow, but trust me, it's going to benefit your chapter in the long run. Um, some of you may remember Michelle Coburn. She came up with this question a couple years ago, and I love it. What keeps you up at night in relation to your job? Kind of a heavy question, but you're going to get a lot of good feedback from your members, and from that feedback, you're going to be able to say, okay, here is what they need to be a better nurse, to be a better student, to be a better educator, whatever it may be that they need. This question is going to tell you, and then you can form some programming around that. Also ask what type of event or program would they be most likely to attend. And so when we say type, we mean content-wise. So again, do they want a research-based program? That may not appeal to them. Are they looking for more networking or social events? Do they need CE credits and they're looking for continuing education? Do they want to do community service? Do they want to give back in some capacity to your community? Ask those questions and then really use the feedback that you get to strategic plan and form your offerings and your programming. Probably one of the biggest budget items that your chapter deals with is events and programming, so always keep in mind budget considerations when it comes to programs. So what components of your programming goals will have a cost associated with them? Is there any communications, maybe printing and postage? Do you pay for an email service, something like that? Do you have to pay for a community location, whether that's on campus or not, or whether it's in person or not? Do you have to pay for some type of webcasting service? Do you pay an author or speaker honorarium if someone is coming and giving a presentation? Gifts, food and beverage. Is there any additional insurance that you need? So always keep these things in mind, and you should work closely with your treasurer on these budgetary items. But don't be afraid to think outside of the box and think about what you can get for free or think about what you can get for a discount. Could you get a sponsor? Do you have members in your chapter that would be willing to be authors or speakers on a certain topic? Do you have free technology and publicity tools? Again, back to email. Is that free? Social media is free. Do you have a Facebook page? What community locations do you work with that you could use their space for free? Can you get a sponsor for any attendee handouts or gifts or food or printing? So a lot of places will work with nonprofits, which your chapter is a nonprofit entity. So think outside the box and don't just automatically write the check for a fee for a location rental before you ask some of these questions of, hey, do you have a nonprofit discount? Things like that. However, you can work to reduce what you're spending and, be fiscally responsible with your membership dollars, the better. So think outside the budget. Always, again, think about what you can get for free, discount. You don't want to pinch your pennies and you don't want to be misers as a chapter, but again, save as much as you can so that you can use what you save to offer more programming. So community events, for example, you can work with Habitat for Humanity, a local homeless shelter, other local opportunities to volunteer that won't cost you and your chapter anything, and people can participate and give back. There are a lot of community health clinics that need volunteers that you can work with at no cost to you. And collaborate with school, university, hospital initiatives. Are they having programming that you can, co-sponsor and help pay for and team up on, and your members get something out of it and you're not spending a whole lot of money? Informal events are always really nice to have too. It doesn't have to be some big, expensive, grandiose research day. Host a social event at a local hotel or community. Have happy hour gatherings. You should not be buying any alcohol if you're having a happy hour, but invite people to come and visit together. Host a coffee talk or a live chat on Twitter. Host a lunch and learn presentation where you're just facilitating these conversations, maybe bringing in a speaker, but that's pretty much it as far as cost. People bring their own food or, they pay for their own snacks and drinks at happy hour, things like that. Let's talk a little bit about logistics of event planning from pre-planning, before, all the way through and after your event. So before your event, use the volunteer portal on your website to find event volunteers. If you don't know how to use your event portal, call us at headquarters. We are happy to coach your chapter on how to do that. Give plenty of advance notice and remind people frequently. Send out multiple reminders about your upcoming events and mix up how you send those messages. Don't just keep sending out emails. Maybe send out a mailed newsletter, post on social media, use your chapter website, and diversify your messaging. And always share as many details as you can think of. There's this thing called the curse of knowledge where you're communicating about something and you just assume that I know all of these details because you do. But as a member, I may not know what your dress code is. I may not be as familiar with your community or campus location. And so I don't know exactly what building you're referring to. So provide as much logistical information as you can to make your members feel as comfortable as possible when they want to engage with you. Make it as easy on them as you can. Tell them what exactly to expect, if they need to bring anything, if they should prepare anything. Is this members only, or can they bring a friend and bring their family? Include all of that information so that they are able to engage and come to your events. During your event, always have a welcoming team. There's nothing worse than walking into a large room of people and you may not know anyone and no one says hello. Hand out name tags. Have a welcoming team there to provide any gifts or handouts. Introduce members to your board or to established members. Use your volunteer portal again to organize these volunteers. Always introduce speakers and special guests, including any community partners, any sponsors that you get, any board members. Always put those people in front of your members. And always have a calendar of upcoming events, contact information, volunteer opportunities, things like that, that you can hand out and share with people as they're walking out the door. After your event, have another one of your volunteers follow up via email to those who attended. Have them thank them personally. That goes a really long way. And then use that communication to also survey attendees to see what they thought of the event and what they might tweak or change for future events. You should always be asking for feedback from your members. Post about the event in the chapter discussion forum to let those who were there kind of continue any conversations, to continue to share positive feedback, build up excitement about the chapter and chapter events. And you're also then filling in people who were unable to make it so they don't feel as left out and they feel like they still get something out of it. Any questions on any event planning before we touch on serving as a committee chair? No? Okay. So your third responsibility is serving as committee chair as needed. So as a board member, you have the ability to convene a committee to help share your responsibilities. You have quite a bit of responsibility with particularly that event and program planning. So it might be worth you as a vice president requesting putting together a committee to help you with some of this. Your entire board should have this conversation to decide which committees might be needed, but maybe a program planning committee is something that you feel like you need. Maybe you're doing so many programs that you just need some additional help. Maybe a publicity committee could benefit you as vice president. So always think about if you have additional work and your chapter has additional ready and willing volunteers who want to assist the chapter, think about how you can utilize those people in a non-required committee position. As always, try to keep up with Sigma. We always have new stuff happening, new exciting things on the chapter website. So want to make you aware of those while I have your eyes today. You are hopefully more than aware of our new rebranding. If you have not already, please check out the brand resources within the All Chapter Officers work group. Your chapter should have at least 1 or 2 copies of our chapter brand guide in hand, a physical copy. If not, it's available for download. It goes over what's changing, what is not, how to use these resources, where to get branding resources, and as you can kind of see over to the right here, what to do and what not to do with our new logo and our new branding. So make sure that you feel comfortable and educated on the rebrand so that your chapter is meeting brand standards and that you feel like you're conveying this rebrand to your members. If you haven't already, download your chapter logo from the management system. These are a couple examples of what they look like. They're pre-made for you. You can download them and save them to your computer so you can put them wherever you need them. Please don't alter them in any way. We try to make it as easy as possible for you all, so just download them as they are and start using them as much as you can. We do have updated chapter websites, including a new URL. So all chapter websites have been rebranded. You can see the purple has changed. There's that blue and gray as the accent colors. Everything looks really beautiful and staff have worked really hard to update that. But also know that your chapter's website has been rebranded. So instead of alpha.nursingsociety.org, Alpha Chapter's website is now alpha.sigmanursing.org. If you have communications that go to members and that still says alpha.nursingsociety.org, it's going to, redirect your members to your updated URL, but as much as you can, try and start incorporating that new URL and all the new branding. We do have new chapter products that are being rebranded, including this beautiful chapter tablecloth. It's normally $200. It is on sale for $100 through June 30th, so you still got a couple weeks if your chapter would like a newly branded tablecloth. We also have stadium cups, board member name tags, all kinds of stuff with new brands. And we keep rolling things out too. So as your chapter runs out of collateral or runs out of swag and you need some newly branded items, be sure to check out our chapter products catalog and our print on demand system for those newly branded items. Any questions that you might have about being vice president, being a board member, any branding questions, any feedback, any successes that you would like to share at this time? Oh, we have one good question. Yes, to clarify, when we say 2 programs per year, again, that's referring to fiscal year, not calendar year. So our fiscal year is July 1 to June 30th. So you must have at least 2 programs or events in that time frame. So from July 1 to June 30th. Yes, good question. Any other questions? If there are chapter leader updates that need to be made as far as who's serving on a chapter leader and who has access to your chapter website, that is all done within the chapter management system. If it's just items in relation to a chapter leader's name or contact information or credentials, things like that, that is something that each member can update themselves through us. So if, for example, Mary, you have a PhD now and you want PhD to show after your name, you should update your contact information with us so that it shows correctly on the chapter website. Mary, if any of your board members have any questions or need to make any changes, just have them call us. Did I answer your question? Awesome. Great. Good question. Thank you. Any other questions or feedback that I can answer for you while I have on the line? Okay, I'm not seeing any questions come through. I will stay on the line for just a few more minutes, just in case something pops into your head. But thank you again for your attention and your attendance today. Thank you also for being so willing to serve your chapter and serve Sigma as a vice president and as a board leader. If there's ever anything that you need or that your chapter needs, please don't hesitate to call us. Have a great rest of your afternoon and a great week.